World Test Championship final, 7th of June at the Oval in London. That's the setup. India versus Australia, number 1 versus number 2. And over the years, we've enjoyed every moment of this rivalry. From when it started in your days, you set the seeds of that rivalry, wanting India to be a better cricketing nation. It was born from that. So for both of these nations, we've now reached the summit and want to go one step further in the ultimate test. What does it feel like? What does it mean for them to be playing in a World Test Championship final?
Well, I think already, the fact that we're here today, as you said, about 20 days out from the World Test Championship final starting, I think it goes to show what sort of excitement there is around this a one-off test match, really. And, I think the ICC have to be applauded for making this possible. I think it's 4 years now in the making since they turned it from being just the points leader at the end of the year, winning the Mace, to having this one-off final. Obviously, we know that New Zealand were too good a couple of years ago, and now we see the two best teams over the last 2 years in Australia and India go head-to-head at the Oval over what potentially is 6 days. So we actually have a winner in that Test match. It's really exciting. We've got here at the moment, we've got a Delhi Capitals have a last game tomorrow. I then fly straight back home. I've got about a week and a half at home, but I can't wait to get back to London to commentate on the game, and then obviously I'll be there for the Ashes after that. But you also touched on this rivalry between these two teams. This won't just be an everyday, ordinary Test match. There's a lot more on the line here. Both teams will want to be recognised as being the best team, test team in the world over these last couple of years. So. It's fantastic to think that you have Australia and India playing in a neutral venue in a one-off test, and the winner will be holding that thing up at the end. I think it becomes ultra exciting.
It's a beauty. Ricky, you've got your hands on a lot of World Cup trophies. How would you like to get your hands on that?
I tried to get my hands on it again today, but I wasn't allowed. I didn't have enough white gloves with me to be able to pick it up. But no, whoever is holding that up at the end of their first week of June will be very proud of what they've done over a long period of time. That's the thing with this. You listen to the players talk about it all the time now. The whole idea that this concept was brought into world cricket was to give more context to every single day's play during a Test match. So you hear the players now talking about just how important it is that we can try and find a way to win this Test match, so we stay alive in the race for the World Test Championship. We've seen teams over the last couple of years actually miss a chance in the final because of a slow over rate and being docked points through the year. So there's so much that goes into it, so much. You think about every Test match you play is 1 week's work. You do a few days of preparation, you play for 5 days to hopefully get a result to give yourself a chance to play in a final like this one. So there's a lot of hard work gone into it, and as I said, whoever is good enough to be standing up there at the end of the day and hold that trophy up will be very, very deserving of it.
And sometimes that hard work is just reserved for those sessions. I just take you back to yesterday. We all saw Virat Kohli score his 60, 20, IPL 100. And in the post-match, he said, I didn't play those fancy shots. I stuck to my guns because Test cricket is around the corner. So that process has already permeated through the players, that 2 years of hard work. And as an extraordinary captain yourself, from a captain who builds a team for these last 2 years to ultimately reach that goal of getting your hands on this, what has that process been like for both India and Australia? Yeah,
well, you'll hear even the players. So I've had Mitchell Marsh and David Warner here with me at the Delhi Capitals, and you think right through this IPL, Cameron Green's in Mumbai, and all the Indian players are obviously here playing. Even their training would have changed over the last couple of weeks. They'll be training differently. They won't be just thinking about the next IPL game they play. Some of their bowlers will be on workload management, to make sure they've got enough overs under their belt to be ready to play a Test match. So that's, we talk about preparation and planning. I'm sure there's been, to get to this point, there's been 2 years of Test cricket anyway, but then once you've actually made it to the final, then all the planning starts. India, because of the IPL being on right now, I've probably got a few more injury issues and concerns than what Australia have got. We've seen in the last week that Josh Hazlewood looks like he's picked up a bit of a niggle. He hasn't played the last couple of games for RCB, as you would have seen last night, and he'll be doing everything he can now to make sure that he's fit for the World Test Championship. And obviously for Australia, there's the Ashes straight after that. So, with KL Rahul being injured, it's going to be interesting to see if, Umar Shadav injured as well. So India have got a couple of injury concerns going into it, but there's still a bit over 3 weeks to go, and we keep our fingers crossed and hope that both teams are able to put their strongest teams on the park, because it'd be disappointing if both teams weren't able to put their best 11 on the park and go head to head and see who's the best team.
obviously we look forward to that in about 20 days time, where there will be a new world test champion, but it's about the rivalry. Okay, so I want to talk about this generational shift, Ricky, because when you used to bring the Australian team over, or we used to come there were kids like us who were growing up terrified of facing Australia and facing Ricky Ponting and the kind of legacy that you created. Then India tried to imbibe, and now if you look at the last couple of Border Gavaskar trophies, it's shifted. It's India that have held on to that, tried to dominate as much as possible. So how do you see this transitional shift at all in the rivalry? Because every time Australia come here, there's still a fight, there's still a scare, it's still going down to the wire, there's no pushing over either side anymore.
Oh no, I mean that absolutely, that rivalry has increased and will increase game by game. I think if we wind the clock back, it was probably in the late 1990s really, I think, when India really woke up to how big a force they were in world cricket. I think that's when the shift was really there. When the real power of the game sort of switched over to India, and to be honest, when through the likes of Ganguly and these guys, where they knew if they wanted to compete against the best teams in the world, that they probably had to start playing their cricket in a different way, and I think that's where it changed. When Steve Waugh was captain, obviously I took over from him. Steve Waugh was probably captaining against Saurav and Sachin at different times, and you could feel a real change in the late 90s. And then that rivalry, series by series, game by game, whether it be a Test match, a one day or a T20, that rivalry has grown and grown and grown to the point now where you actually hear a lot of the younger Australian players talk about that the rivalry is almost as big as the Australian-England rivalry. And if it ever gets to that, then that's when you have, through the course of a year, that's where you have some incredible, the course of a World Test Championship cycle, that's where you end up having some amazing series. If Australia and India is as big as a national series, and you've got both of those in one calendar year, well then you've got some great cricket to watch and witness. So even you think about the next couple of months, the one-off test for the World Test Championship final, and then Australia and England have got 5 test matches after that. So we're guaranteed to see some great test cricket in the next few months.
With all due respect, we do love the Ashes. We relish watching that rivalry. If you ask any Indian here right now who are India's greatest test rivals, they will say Australia. So for us, that's a big deal as far as Indians are concerned. But it's about the skill set, right? If you think about it. Over the years, Indian batters went to Australia and learned how to play the bounce a little bit. Over here, you have, like let's say a Cameron Green who excelled in Indian subcontinental conditions. Mitchell Starc recently came here in the one-day series and, found a little bit of his groove back. But we're talking about a neutral venue. We're talking about the Oval that is supposed to take away home conditions. So the neutral venue factor, how much does it play into a World Test Championship final?
Yeah, it will, I think. I mean, if you look at it just from a conditions point of view only, you would think that the conditions in England should suit Australia a little bit more. The English conditions are definitely more like Australia than they are India, and especially what we've seen the last few times that Australia have actually been to India and played Test cricket here. We've seen the wickets that they played on. They have been, very spin-friendly, spin-oriented wickets, which Australians have always found difficult to play on. But saying that, I thought the comeback that the Australians showed in the last series here, in the last 2 Test matches, was really pleasing. So, there's a neutral venue. There's also the choice of ball as well, which has been in the news the last few weeks. Will it be the Duke ball? Will it be the Kookaburra ball? I think it sounds like both teams have decided on it's going to be the Kookaburra ball. So even that, you don't know how the Kookaburra ball is going to play in England. Every time you go to England, you're used to seeing the Duke ball and what it does. So there's those little aspects to it as well. But if you looked at conditions only, then you would have to think that there's a slight advantage to Australia.
It's amazing that India and Australia have never played at a neutral venue. Although having said that, we've been to the Oval in England. I'm pretty sure there are going to be a lot of blue shirts in the crowd.
There'll be more blue than there will green and gold, I'm sure.